Professional development within the public sector is, of course, one of the things that our next guest is very motivated by. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Erma Ranieri, the Commissioner for Public Sector Employment. In her addition to role as Commissioner, she's also currently the Acting Chief Executive of the Department of Premier and Cabinet. And I'd ask you to join me in welcoming Erma.
Thanks everyone, and I've been a member of IPA for over 30 years, so there's a plug as well. Thank you to Jack. I thought he did a marvellous welcome to country. I'd like to acknowledge that the land we meet on today is traditional lands for the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural heritage and beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. It's a great pleasure. I open every one of these forums and today I guess, want to think about how we challenge, create and reimagine. These are the words that spring to mind when I'm asked what I believe are the building blocks of a strong public service. I often ask myself, what can we do to help enhance and transform our sector? How do we keep moving forward? Naturally, I don't always have the answers, but my mindset is clear. You need to be agile, you need to be fearless, and you need to look forward. That's why I'm delighted to be here with you all at today's Entrepreneurship Forum and share my thoughts on the future of our profession. Today, you'll come together and explore the opportunities and the possibilities for our sector. I'm also very pleased to see our keynote speaker, Charles Landry, again. It's always great to have Charles back in town sharing his extensive expertise. As you may know, Charles has been such a great champion of innovation and change in our sector. He was our first thinker in residence. And for our state in particular, I think we've got some exciting things happening. I'd like to welcome you to Adelaide officially, Charles. One thing I'd like to say personally, Charles, is that you've inspired me to dream big, be positive, and to never underestimate what is possible and the power of a group of people working together. I'd also like to welcome everybody gathered here this morning. Very proud of our 3 tables of our Jobs for Youth graduates. A special mention, you are the future leaders. We're going to hand over the baton and we want you to be very innovative and we want you to hold our public service in high regard. I'm always impressed by the passion and commitment of this community of practice. It is such a great initiative. And as Dan said, we didn't start with much and it's growing and it grows every year. It speaks volumes about the drive and ambition of people working in our organisations. To put it simply, more power to you all and everyone that actually works tirelessly in the public sector. I really want to see this community practice grow and evolve to help us build on the momentum and help create a groundswell of innovation and change, and that's already happening. In both my roles as Commissioner for Public Sector Employment as the Acting Chief Executive of the Department of Premier and Cabinet, let me just say that you have my full support for your work and the chances you're willing to take, and I'll be right there behind you. Now I want to talk about a few things about the public service and about change. Firstly, let's talk about machinery of government changes. I know that's always a really exciting topic. The reason why I want to talk about that is that I had, the privilege of leading this current machinery of government change that came into effect on the 1st of July. And I realised that machinery of government changes, often you get people raising their eyebrows and going, oh, not this again. But it's actually not necessarily about the structural changes, although it's really important for a government to reflect the direction it wants to go. For me, it actually was a way of thinking differently about why we're here and actually re-engage with why I want to be in the public service. So it actually gives me a chance to sit back and actually think about what it is that we can do differently. I felt this time, for me in particular, these changes helped me and our sector to revitalise and refresh. It's an opportunity for us to all take stock of what we have achieved and where we're going next. It brings challenges and enables us to think laterally and problem solve, which often leads to innovation. It also actually enabled me to think about how collaboration needs to work. No matter where you are structurally, we cannot do anything alone. So let me talk a bit about my new office for the Commissioner for Public Sector Employment and Innovation. One of the things that was really important to me is a new attached office that is called the Office of the Commissioner for Public Sector Employment. Why is that important? Many of you would remember it as the Office for the Public Sector. It was more than a name change. It's actually an attached office, and it brings a level of independence and continuity for the public sector. Now, those of you that have spoken to me over the last 4 or so years, it was really important for the public service to have an office that actually reflected us as a profession and us basically going forward for the next 20, 30 years. Obviously, I welcome that as the Commissioner, but also as someone who is passionate about our profession and its fundamental integrity. The public service is the glue that keeps our services going beyond every 4 years. How we serve a government is important, and how we maintain our professionalism is for our community is ultimately what we will be judged on. As my role in the acting Chief Executive of Premier and Cabinet, the Premier has made it clear that he wants to see innovation as a core feature of the public service. And the one thing I have realised over the last 3 months or so is that this Premier values our opinion as well and speaks very highly of the public sector, and I welcome that as the Commissioner. We must all strive to do things as efficiently and effectively as possible in the interests of the community that we serve. To support this imperative, I've taken the opportunity, as part of the MOG changes, to move the public sector reform and innovation function from my office, from the Commissioner for Public Sector Employment, to the Department of Premier and Cabinet. I don't like letting go of that, you do know that. This includes the Change at South Australia initiative and the Innovation Lab, because I want to see a lot more that we can do together, and with me being in that role for the next little while. This is exciting and important. It enhances the services that the Department of Premier and Cabinet can provide. It's close to the Premier, and it will support and enable public sector innovation. Specifically, we need to be better at leveraging technology, engaging with community and collaborating inside and outside government to transform public policy and services. These MOG changes focus on the needs of business and the community, and that will help when we establish a productivity commission as well. But there is something else that is critical, and it will underpin our success, and in a word, it's culture. We need a culture that supports the risks and opportunities that are inherent in a truly creative working life. And creating that culture starts with chief executives, and we're talking a lot about that around the table with chief executives. That includes me first, but it is ultimately giving life by enthusiastic champions such as you. How do we support creativity? I truly believe that we should live our lives creatively, whether at home or at work. We must take ownership of a vision of who we can be, articulate the values that drive us, and back ourselves to take a chance. Through that process, we can get a clearer definition of who we are, how we should live and work, and what we can mean to the world. We should be excited by our own lives, and that includes our workplaces. But too often there is tension between who we could be and who we feel we should be. Are people excited by the potential for change, or are we afraid of what we might lose? I saw that a lot in the machinery of government changes. Are we afraid that in being in the public sector we could be, we're neglecting to be the public sector we should be? That kind of passionate, values-driven creativity isn't something that we normally associate with bureaucracies, but it shouldn't necessarily be so. I love the term creative bureaucracy, reaffirmed to me through Charles Landry's work. It captures perfectly the tension for people who want to innovate new ways of working, but also have to serve democracy's need for transparency and accountability. In my experience, doing this requires personal leadership of all of you. It takes courage and tenacity, and it takes professionalism, integrity and wisdom. They're all our values. If we can do this, it will be in no small part to the work of people who are gathered in this room this morning and your work through the community of practice. And it will also be due to our partnerships with people like Charles, who see clearly the important role that government can play in the creative development of our communities and in turn help shape the future of our profession. Together, anything is possible. Thank you.
Irma, thank you, and thank you for reminding us of both the ideas of purpose and thinking about where we want to go, as well as how we get there and how we might make some of those changes to enable us to do it, and how we might change systems or change processes to enable us to get there faster.